in honor of the fact that we'll be having one of the first sort of scheduled libertarian debates that we've had in a while in December, I give you Utah's Senator Mike Lee. Now, here's the thing. Now that there is, and we will find out, there's a runoff election in, is it Mississippi? Mike Espy and I can't remember the Republican.
Cindy Hyde-Smith.
Yeah, Hyde-Smith, who has a real affinity for talking about lynchings and whatnot, hangings, public hangings. But as it stands now, with Bill Nelson having conceded this weekend in Florida, Republicans have I think a 53 to 47 advantage. 53 to 47 advantage. Or I should say 52 to 47 advantage. It could end up being 53, I think, with this one in Tennessee, but who knows? It could go the other way. A guy like Mike Lee gives him a little bit more breathing room to strut a little bit of his libertarian ideals. Because as, people's vote becomes less crucial, they can brand themselves a little bit more. Right? Susan Collins is released. She can pretend that she cares about a woman's right to choose more now than she did when she was absolutely needed for a vote on Kavanaugh. So here is Mike Lee giving a speech to the Federalist Society. This is the ones that developed guys like Kavanaugh.
This is the one who asked the moms.
Yeah, ask the moms. Here he is talking about how the left is going to start a civil war in this country unless they give up things like a federally mandated highway system or other functions of our government.
According to any reasonable measuring stick, the dysfunctional status quo is unsustainable, even in good times like those we're experiencing right now. It's driving our government toward insolvency and our politics toward violence. Realistically...
Pause it. I know people get annoyed when I interrupt sometimes these videos, but our government does not have the ability to be insolvent. You understand that, right? Our government does not have the inability to be insolvent unless it decides it wants to be insolvent. We have the ability to print money. We have the largest, or I should say the most meaningful economy in the world. Obviously, China is very important as well. But our currency essentially works all around the world. We have a very robust economy. We have the ability to print our own money. We also have the ability to tax people. It is impossible for the government of the United States to be insolvent. But continue.
Realistically, Americans have two options. Either we're going to once again embrace the Constitution's vision of a diverse, tolerant, pluralistic union of states and of communities, each governed according to the values and priorities of its own citizens. Or this fundamentally un-American contest, one recklessly designed to determine which half of our nation will have the power, at least temporarily, to unilaterally impose its will and its values on the other half, will escalate violently out of control.
Pause it. I want you to understand how nuts of what he's talking about is. First of all, it is completely an American concept. Like the Constitution suggests that Congress, right, will control things like commerce, interstate commerce, and has responsibility for the general welfare. Mike Lee doesn't, I don't think, have a problem with immigration, for the feds doing immigration either. But continue. Let's just listen to this absurdity. He wants us to go back to an era, let's say, where states could say, come up with their own voting laws about who can and cannot vote based on things, let's say, like by race or by a poll tax or a literacy test, right? Or maybe even who can and cannot own slaves.
Also, they don't have half of the country on their side. It's not half and half. This isn't half split popularity-wise.
He's saying that the majority will impose its will on the rest of the country. But yes, in terms of population, that's right. But continue.
Control. Ultimately, this will come down to a binary choice. A simple binary choice. Federalism or violence. Many on the left don't seem too concerned about any of this. They believe demographic and historic trends, coupled with what many see as the inherent rightness of their leftist cause, make their ultimate victory over Red America inevitable and morally justifiable. They believe every lever of federal power will one day soon and permanently be in their hands. They are content with nonstop political total war because they're sure they're going to win it, blind to the fact that such a victory would come at the expense of the American experiment itself.
Pause it. Now, just to understand what he said, this is a threat. This is a threat.
Like a secession threat.
It is a civil war threat, right? I mean, he says we have two choices. One is to embrace the system of government, the neo-Confederate, essentially, policies of allowing the states to function as completely autonomous fiefdoms. Or there's going to be violence. That's the choices that we have, America, according to this senator.
Unless or until this changes, unless or until we change this, it therefore falls to conservatives to chart a new course. Not simply to turn away from disaster, but to turn America toward something better, toward a genuinely happy and sustainable future, one of tolerance and diversity of viewpoint.
That's it. There's my diversity of viewpoint. Either you start letting states discriminate and create a race to the bottom in terms of protections for consumers and workers and citizens, or there's going to be violence. Let's hear more of this lunatic's ravings.
The low-hanging fruit is obvious. The interstate highway system, K through 12 public education, the federal higher education accreditation cartel, early childhood education, the Department of Commerce, the huge glut of federally owned land and real estate, housing policy, workforce regulation. These and the knotty interconnected problems of welfare dependence and health care would all be more easily untied if 50 diverse and motivated states were working on them. 50 diverse states where, by the way, populations disperse differently. Healthcare is provided differently in each locality, and each state has more of an ability to decide what solutions will most benefit their respective populations. In Washington, because...
Pause it. I want you to understand what he's saying here. He's saying get rid of things like the federal highways, which connect people. Now, I don't know if he's talking about on a practical level or on some misunderstanding of the Constitution, right? But just imagine you could have completely different standards in the 50 states across the country for the highways that connect them.
Those Wisconsin cheese highways, I think, would be pretty cool.
And all the diversity that it represents. You know, folks, people who live in Wyoming, their health care could be radically different than the health care of people, let's say, in New Jersey. Because in Wyoming, they have two hearts in every human being. What's funny, of course, is the idea that he'll also say, like, well, you should let health insurance companies sell across state lines to increase efficiency and competition. Now, A, it's funny because they already can do that. But B, they seem to understand the concept of size and risk pools, cutting costs. I mean, heck, how is it that Walmart manages to sell their stuff in Michigan and in, let's say, Georgia? How do they do that? It's nuts. Oh, I know how they do it. Through the federal highway system. Continue on.
In Washington, because of America's deep red-blue divide, these are very controversial issues. They're less so within our increasingly dark red and dark blue states. When there is no national consensus or federal imperative, there should not be federal law, especially if there is a greater degree of consensus within each state.
If everybody in my state agrees that we should have segregated water fountains, what business is it of the federal government to tell us that we can't? I think that's the conversation we would have been having 50 years ago.
Like, they're always afraid of tyranny of the majority, except at the state level, where it becomes more acute.
Right. Then the tyranny of the majority, as long as it's done by the state. That is the perfect unit, or really the county. I mean, why not the county? Why shouldn't we do this by the county? Or what about municipalities? Like, if that theory works so well about the states, why wouldn't we just do this down to the neighborhood?
I should be able to control my own home, Sam.
Well, I mean,
My own
honestly,
laws.
like what? It's completely arbitrary. It's completely arbitrary, just based upon, and this is what libertarianism seems to always boil down to. We're going to reduce, or we're going to land on an idea of government and the most appropriate size of government that maintains the order of power that I benefit from. Tends to be really the operating principle of libertarianism. But we will have more time to discuss that in the future, indeed.
Like, these guys are basically setting out to make sure democracy can't overrule capital and property. That's
right. And we're just going to find the proper size of government that is going to allow for, we just need one or two places to be the drain so that everything flows down essentially from there.